The email arrived on a rainy Monday morning, subject line in all caps, bold and sharp like a slap to the face. Urgent, Project Ascension final prep, all hands required. I hadn't even taken a sip of my coffee yet. I stared at the screen, then at the unopened medical leave form sitting beside me. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I knew what this was. A warning. A shot across the bow from the top floor of Zenith Creative, the boutique strategy firm that had eaten my 20s. For 6 years, I had given everything to that agency. I was their brand whisperer, the woman behind half their award-winning campaigns. I'd slept on couches in the war room, missed my sister's wedding, and cancelled 3 vacations in a row, all in the name of landing clients who probably couldn't even pronounce my last name. But none of that would matter now. Because this wasn't about a client. This was about my father. He was dying. Stage 4. The kind of cancer that doesn't negotiate. And I was the only one left, no siblings, no cousins, just me and a man who'd raised me alone, who still left handwritten notes on my birthday, and who never missed a single piano recital, even when I flubbed every note. And now, he needed me more than ever. I took a breath, stood up, and climbed the stairs to the top floor. The executive suite at Zenith was a shrine to brutal ambition, glass walls, polished concrete, minimalist furniture, and zero space for sentimentality. At the head of it all sat Veronica Dale, founder and CEO. She'd been my mentor, my idol, and my biggest critic. I had once believed she saw something in me. But today, her eyes were cold as winter rain. I knocked. She didn't look up. Yes? I need 5 minutes. You have 2. I stepped inside. My heart thundered, but I kept my voice steady. I need to take medical leave. My father's condition has worsened. He's in palliative care. I need to go home. Just for a week. That got her attention. Her head snapped up, lips already curling in distaste. A week? She repeated. Now. I nodded. I'll work remotely. I'll handle the pitch deck. I just need to be there physically for him. Veronica stood slowly, walking to the floor-to-ceiling window like she always did when she was about to deliver hard blow. She spoke without turning. You're a strategist, Elise. Not a nurse. Your father's illness is tragic. Truly. But Project Ascension is in final countdown. Our largest tech client is expecting brilliance. And you want to go play Florence Nightingale. I swallowed hard. This isn't about Florence Nightingale. It's about being a daughter. She turned. No, she said, flatly. It's about being a professional. Silence stretched between us, thick and bitter. I could hear the hum of the espresso machine from the break room below, the muffled clicks of a dozen strategists trying to impress a woman who didn't know how to say thank you. I've never asked for anything in 6 years, I said quietly. Not once. Not a raise. Not time off. I've sacrificed every milestone in my life for this agency. Now I'm asking for 7 days. Veronica crossed her arms. And I'm telling you no. Then, as if for emphasis, she stepped forward and tapped the leave form still in my hand. Your recent performance has been slipping, she said, voice razor sharp. You've been distracted. Late to briefings. Low on energy. And now you're emotionally compromised. This is a high-stakes industry, Elise. Not a therapy session. If you walk out that door, don't come back. For a second, I couldn't breathe. The threat hung in the air, daring me to fold. But I didn't. I straightened my spine, lifted my chin, and looked her in the eye. Then this is me walking. Her eyes narrowed. Don't expect a reference. I don't need one, I said, turning toward the door. I have a legacy. As I left her office, something strange happened. I didn't feel broken. I felt free. Downstairs, the office hummed with energy, oblivious to the tectonic shift that had just occurred upstairs. I returned to my desk, pulled a small cardboard box from the cabinet, and began packing. A ceramic mug with Strategy Queen in gold foil. A photo of my dad and me on my graduation day. A potted succulent that had somehow survived every 90-hour work week I threw at it. A few co-workers passed by. Some offered sympathetic glances. Others, confused half-smiles. Only one stopped. Mira, from Content, leaned in. "Is it true?" I nodded. "Because of your dad?" "Yeah. Damn," she whispered. "You don't deserve that." "I know." As the elevator doors closed behind me, I looked around the lobby one last time. The glass. The marble. The illusion. And then I stepped into the rain, box in hand. That afternoon, I was on a flight to Portland. The hospice was quiet, all soft beeping monitors and warm lighting. My father was asleep when I arrived, his hand resting gently on the blanket. I sat beside him, exhaled for the first time in days, and whispered, "I'm here." His eyes fluttered open. He smiled weakly. "I knew you'd come." I gripped his hand. "I'm sorry I didn't come sooner." He shook his head. "You're here now." And that was all he needed. And though I didn't know it then, it was all I needed too. Because that week, those quiet, fragile days in a little hospice on the edge of the city, would change everything. Not because of what I lost, but because of what I was about to gain. The hospice room next door always played jazz. Soft, crackly saxophones and lazy piano riffs drifted through the hallway each morning as I walked in, carrying coffee and whatever book I'd brought to read aloud to my father. He loved stories, even now, when speaking took too much out of him. I would sit by his bedside and read, sometimes novels, sometimes just bits of poetry, and he'd squeeze my hand when he liked a line. It was quiet work. Healing work. But it wasn't always quiet in room 207. That room belonged to Malcolm Grant. And Malcolm Grant was anything but quiet. The first time I met him, he was mid-argument with a nurse about the criminally bad state of the hospital's Wi-Fi. "I built the second largest private data firm on the West Coast," he barked. "And I can't get a stable signal in here? It's like the Stone Age." The nurse rolled her eyes. I chuckled. He turned to me with sharp eyes that softened slightly when he noticed the book in my hand. "Is that Austen?" he asked, cocking a brow. "Bronte," I corrected. "Jane Eyre." He groaned. "Ah, the original emotionally unavailable male lead. You've got taste." That was the beginning. Over the next few days, we shared a hallway, some banter, and eventually coffee. I learned he was in for complications from late-stage heart disease. No family visiting. No cards on the windowsill. Just a mountain of medical files and a silver laptop that looked permanently attached to his lap. He was gruff, brilliant, opinionated, and lonely. Like my father. Like I had been, too, in that windowless office back at Zenith, pretending another branding deck could fill the aching gap where my joy used to live. One morning, after a particularly quiet night with Dad, his breathing shallow, his fingers cold, I stepped outside the room and found Malcolm pacing within 4-pole, muttering into a Bluetooth headset. "Tell the board if they vote to dissolve without reading the quarterly risk summary, I'll dissolve my shares instead." He caught my eye, yanked the earpiece out, and gave me a sheepish smile. "You ever have to babysit a board of cowards, Elise?" "Just a couple dozen marketing execs who think they're gods," I said, offering him half my muffin. He took it. And then, unexpectedly, he said, "Sit with me." We sat in the little family kitchen at the end of the hallway, surrounded by beige walls and bad linoleum, and for the first time, he asked me real questions. What did I used to do? Why had I left? I hesitated at first, brushing it off as work burnout, but something about his sharp silence made me talk. I told him everything, about my father, about Veronica Dale, about being fired not because I failed, but because I refused to keep pretending ambition was more important than people. When I was done, he nodded thoughtfully. "They always think kindness is weakness," he said. "Until someone reminds them that it's the only thing that ever lasts." I blinked. "That sounds like something your wife would have said." He chuckled. "She would have said it while repainting the whole house and firing my COO. That's when I learned about her, Margot. A painter. A gallery owner. The only person Malcolm had ever taken orders from. She'd passed 5 years earlier. Since then, Malcolm had buried himself in work, in board meetings, in building a company that, he now admitted, didn't quite know what it stood for anymore. Success is a loud room, he said. You don't realize how little of it matters until no one's left to listen. I didn't know what to say to that. So I just sat there. And we ate muffins in silence. Over the next week, I became a regular fixture in both rooms. Mornings with Dad. Afternoons reading to Malcolm. Evenings drinking bad vending machine cocoa in the hallway, watching the rain crawl down the windows. He let me read him my favorite passages. He argued over philosophy. He quizzed me on business principles, occasionally stopping to give advice disguised as sarcasm. You ever want to run your own firm? He asked one night. I used to, I said. Before everything. He studied me for a moment. Then he nodded. You still do. You just haven't forgiven yourself for letting the last one eat you alive. That one hit deep. And he was right. I didn't miss Zenith. But I missed the part of me that used to believe in what I was building. It was a Wednesday when he called me into his room without the usual preamble. Elise, he said. There's a file in my briefcase. I want you to take it when I go. Go where? I asked, already fearing the answer. He looked at me, tired but peaceful. You know where. I nodded slowly. What's in it? Something important. Something I want you to deliver. To who? He smiled. A knowing, mischievous smile. You'll understand when you read the envelope. I opened the briefcase. Inside was a thick manila folder with one name written in sharp, clean print. Veronica Dale. CEO, Zenith Creative. My stomach dropped. You knew, I whispered. Since the first day, he replied. You said her name when you were angry. I made a few calls. She's one of our holdings. Indirectly. I sat down, heart pounding. Why didn't you say anything? Because I didn't want to know the strategist, he said. I wanted to know the woman who stood up when no one else would. That's who I've been watching. I looked at the folder in my hands. He tapped it gently. It's time she learned the cost of cutting corners, and compassion. That night, I stayed late with Dad. He was asleep, peaceful. I sat between the two rooms that had become my world. On one side, a man I'd loved all my life. On the other, a man who'd reminded me how to believe in myself again. I thought of Veronica, sitting in her glass fortress, unaware that the world beneath her feet had already begun to shift. And for the first time in a long while, I wasn't scared of the future. Because I had something better than a job offer. I had a purpose. The Zenith Creative lobby hadn't changed, polished marble floors, cold lighting, and receptionists with practiced smiles that never quite reached their eyes. But something had changed. Me. I wasn't here to beg. I wasn't here to reclaim a title. I was here because a dying man handed me an envelope that had the power to crack this empire open from the inside. And I had every intention of delivering it. Excuse me, I said to the front desk attendant. I am here to see Miss Dale. She gave me a confused smile. I'm sorry, I don't see an appointment under. Tell her it's Elise Monroe, I said, voice calm but firm. And that I have a personal letter from Malcolm Grant. The woman froze. Malcolm Grant? The name worked like a magic spell. A few keystrokes, a hushed phone call, and 5 minutes later, I was holding a visitor badge with my name on it again. The elevator ride to the 23rd floor felt surreal. Just a few weeks ago, I'd left here in shame, fired for the crime of caring too much. Now, I was walking back in as the unexpected courier of consequences. Veronica's assistant looked stricken when she opened the door to the glass-walled conference room. Her eyes flicked nervously toward me, then to the envelope in my hand. She's expecting you, she whispered. Go ahead. Veronica Dale stood behind her desk like a statue, perfect posture, perfect suit, perfectly unaware of how much power she no longer held. Elise, she said coolly, barely concealing her disdain. "I assume this is about your severance. Because if it's about your job—" "It's not," I interrupted. I walked up to the desk and set the envelope down, centered, deliberate. "This is from Malcolm Grant." Her face twitched. She tried to hide it, but the name rattled her. She stared at the envelope for a beat too long, then picked it up with a trembling hand. She unfolded the letter and began reading. And for the first time in all the years I'd known her, the unshakable Veronica de l'Actually faltered. Her eyes scanned the page rapidly. Then again. Her hand lowered. Her lips parted. "No," she said. This can't be." "It is," I said quietly. "Malcolm Grant is pulling all of his investments. Effective immediately. But she fumbled for words. "He's on the board of, he backs our entire Series E." "Not anymore." She snapped to attention, all the ice returning. "You knew this when you came here. You planned this." "I didn't plan anything," I said. "Malcolm did. He watched this firm from a distance for years. Watched how you treated your people. Watched how you treated me. This," I gestured toward the letter, "is his verdict." She paced like a caged animal, one manicured hand in her hair. "This will ruin us. The Bright Star pitch, the expansion plans, our investor trust, it's all built on his capital foundation." I didn't reply. She stopped mid-step and turned on me. "You can fix this," she said, voice brittle. "Talk to him. Explain. Tell him it was all a misunderstanding." "It wasn't. Elise. I came to you," I said. "When my father was dying. I asked for 1 week. You told me to choose between my family and my future. I chose my family. Now, you're being asked to choose between your ego and your legacy. What's it going to be?" She stared at me. And I saw the cracks start to form. Not just panic. Something else. Something dangerously close to realization. "All right," she said finally, voice tight. "What does he want?" I reached into my bag and pulled out a second envelope. A formal agreement, drafted by Malcolm, signed by his legal counsel. Terms that could save Zenith, but only if she agreed to become the kind of leader he believed she could be. She took the document and skimmed it. A leadership restructure. Real medical leave protections. A formal employee wellness policy. Quarterly culture assessments, with consequences. And at the very top, a new role, Director of People and Culture, reporting directly to the CEO. "Is this your job pitch?" she snapped, narrowing her eyes. "No," I said. "It's your second chance. My name's on that role because Malcolm insisted. He trusted me to oversee the change." She scoffed. "He trusted you? You've known him a month. And in that month, I treated him like a person. Not a project. Not an asset. That was all he needed to see." Silence. Then she folded the letter, placed it on the desk, and sat down. "You've got guts," she said. "You taught me that," I replied. "By showing me everything I never want to become." We sat in silence for a few moments. She stared at her reflection in the dark glass of her desk. Then, slowly, she reached for a pen. "Fine," she said. "You start Monday." I nodded, but didn't thank her. Because this wasn't a favor. This was the price of redemption. Back in the elevator, I watched the city skyline roll into view. The world hadn't changed. But I had. That afternoon, I returned to the hospice. Malcolm was asleep, thin and pale, but breathing steadily. I sat by his side and gently took his hand. "It's done," I whispered. She signed everything. His eyes fluttered open. "Knew she would," he rasped. "Dana Dale is ruthless. But she's not stupid." I laughed softly. "You're something else, you know that?" He squeezed my hand. "No, Elise. You are." I blinked back tears. "Why did you choose me?" I asked. "Why give me this much power?" He smiled. "Because you didn't want it." And with that, he closed his eyes again, this time not out of exhaustion, but peace. Mondays at Zenith used to feel like entering a battlefield. Stiff collars, clenched jaws, calendars packed with double-booked meetings and nothing that resembled humanity. But this Monday was different. I stepped off the elevator and walked through the glass-paneled office with quiet authority, no longer a cog in the machine, but a force guiding it towards something better. Employees didn't just nod as I passed. They smiled. Some even waved. 6 days into my new role as Director of People and Culture, and change was already in motion. Veronica had, begrudgingly, followed through on every term in Malcolm's document. Leadership was restructured. Internal policies rewritten. Every employee was now entitled to medical leave, no questions asked, no performance notes attached. Remote work options were launched for those with caregiving responsibilities. HR had finally stopped acting like a disciplinary unit and started functioning like a human resource. It wasn't perfect. Some managers resisted. One even quit. But honestly, that cleared the path faster. On my desk, I had a quote Malcolm once texted me, scribbled on a sticky note. "If you lose the ones who won't change, you've lost nothing." It became my compass. That afternoon, I met with HR, marketing, and operations to finalize our first ever employee wellness fund, a real one, not just a bowl of stale almonds and a corporate discount at the gym. At the meeting's end, Jenny from accounting pulled me aside. "Can I just say?" she began, eyes shining, "this is the first time I've ever felt seen here." I smiled. "That makes two of us." Veronica remained distant, her transformation slow and deliberate, like a glacier thawing. She didn't fight me anymore, but she didn't thank me either. Until one evening. I was walking past her office, ready to head to the hospital, when she called out, "Elise." I paused. She was sitting alone, no laptop, no phone in hand. Just staring at the wall. "Do you ever stop to think about how much you lose by chasing everything?" she asked, not looking at me. "All the time." She nodded, still facing away. "That's why I let you do this," she added. "Not because I had to. Because I was tired of being the reason people broke." I didn't say anything. She finally looked at me. "Do you think it's too late?" she asked. I stepped closer. "It's never too late to become the version of yourself people actually want to follow." She gave a soft, almost imperceptible smile. And in that moment, I saw not the tyrant who'd once fired me, but the woman who'd built this agency from nothing, before the cynicism crept in. Maybe she wasn't lost. Just buried. Every evening, I still went to Malcolm's bedside. His breathing had grown shallow. His skin pale. But his mind, when awake, was as sharp as ever. I told him about every change. He smiled when I said Veronica was listening more than she talked. He raised an eyebrow when I mentioned she'd approved every flexible schedule request without so much as a snide comment. "Told you," he whispered one night, voice thin but content. "Sometimes. All they need is an example." I nodded. "You were the example," I said. "No," he replied. "You were." On Friday, we rolled out our first anonymous employee survey. By Monday morning, the results were in. 98% of staff felt safer speaking up. 94% said they were more motivated than ever. Productivity had gone up, but more importantly, so had trust. I read those numbers to Malcolm that night. His eyes were closed, but a smile crept across his lips. "Legacy," he murmured. "Now you understand." I held his hand a little tighter. 3 days later, he slipped away. Peacefully. Quietly. His fingers still curled around mine. I stayed by his side long after the monitors fell silent. And I cried, not just because I'd lost a friend, but because I knew I'd never meet anyone quite like him again. At his memorial, the room overflowed. But not with the usual suspects. There were no gold-plated name tags, no Fortune 500 suits crowding the aisles. Instead, there were small business owners he'd funded anonymously. Students on scholarships he never publicized. Artists who'd been saved by a quiet donation. Nurses who said he remembered every birthday. A man who swore Malcolm bought him a food truck to escape homelessness. And tucked among them, behind a bouquet of white roses, stood Veronica Dale. No entourage. No blazer. Just a black dress and an expression I'd never seen before. Soft. Sincere. Small. After the service, she approached me. "He really changed you," she said. "No," I replied. "He reminded me who I was before this place tried to strip it away." She nodded. "I never thanked you," she added. "Or him. You still can." We stood in silence. Then she looked around at the crowd. "Did he ever tell you how many lives he saved?" I shook my head. "Neither did I," she said. "Until now." A month later, the office buzzed with quiet energy. Real collaboration. Laughter in the break room. People stayed late not out of fear, but because they cared again. I sat at my desk, now adorned with a photo of Malcolm and me, both of us smiling in that awful hospice lighting, and a small plaque he'd left behind. "Do the work that outlives you." Jenny burst in one afternoon. "You won't believe this," she said breathlessly. "Veronica just approved a team retreat. And get this." She smiled. Genuinely smiled. I laughed. "Progress. Feels like a whole new company," she added. "Feels like yours." I looked out at the city. Maybe it was. Maybe we were just getting started. 1 year to the day after Malcolm passed, a package arrived at my office. It was simple, brown paper, no return address, just my name handwritten in a script I recognized immediately. Malcolm's. I sat in silence before opening it, the city skyline glowing gold behind me, the office unusually quiet as most of the team had gone home early, because now, they could. And not because of exhaustion, but because they knew they mattered enough to rest. I carefully peeled back the paper, revealing a black leather portfolio and a letter on thick cream paper. My name was embossed at the top. "Dear Elise. If you're reading this, it means you've made it a year. I knew you would. I am proud of you, not for how far you've come, but for how many people you've lifted along the way. Empathy is a currency that compounds. Keep spending it boldly. Enclosed are voting shares in Grant Equity Group. They're yours. Use them wisely. Use them to fund the people no one else believes in yet. You'll know them when you see them. They'll remind you of you. Don't let the wrong people get too big, or the right people get overlooked. You once told me that you left your job to stand beside your father. But the truth is, you left to find yourself. Now that you've found her, don't lose her again. Make me proud. With faith in you. Malcolm." I sat back, the letter trembling slightly in my hands. The weight of what he had given me was heavier than I expected, but not in a burdensome way. It felt more like armor. Voting shares. Influence. Direction. Power, not for me, but to be given away to the right ones, in the right places. I looked around my office, glass walls, warm light, a plant I somehow hadn't killed. This space once felt unreachable. Now it felt earned. The inbox on my screen lit up with messages from companies across the country. Startups with soul but no backers. Mid-size firms suffocating under outdated leadership. Nonprofits looking to scale with purpose. They all wanted to know the same thing: how did Zenith change so fast? The answer was simple. We didn't start by fixing the work. We started by fixing the way people were treated doing the work. Dana knocked gently on the glass door. Our weekly coffee ritual. She came in holding 2 cups and something else, an envelope with Brightwell's logo stamped in gold. "They renewed again," she said, handing it over. "Signed for another 3 years." I opened it. Smiled. "Because of the new culture policies?" Dana smirked. "Because they said their account manager seems genuinely happy. They couldn't believe it." I laughed. Dana looked around the room. "You know, I still don't fully understand how Malcolm knew this place could change." "He didn't," I said. "He just hoped." She studied me for a moment. "You could have burned this place down, Elise. After what I did. After the way I treated you. You're not the first person to confuse compassion for weakness," I said, sipping my coffee. But you might be the first who came back to say thank you." Dana blinked. "You're not going to gloat?" "No, I told you so." I shrugged. What would that change? She exhaled and smiled, genuinely this time. "You're dangerous." "No," I corrected. "I'm free. There's a difference." A few weeks later, I found myself in a small cafe downtown meeting a 27-year-old founder named Nina. She ran a micro-wellness brand with a loyal following but no real investors. Her voice shook as she walked me through her deck. I saw the glimmer behind her uncertainty. The sharp mind. The big heart. I saw myself. After she finished, she waited, wide-eyed. "Well?" she asked. I reached into my bag and handed her a check. "From Malcolm's investment group." "I believe in it," I said simply. She blinked. "But, just like that?" "Not just like that," I smiled. "Because I know what it means to be overlooked. And because someone once took a chance on me, not because of a resume, but because of who I was when no one else was watching." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I won't let you down." "You won't," I said. "But even if you do, you'll get up again. That's what matters." The ripples of change spread further than I expected. Former Zenith employees started their own agencies, with people-first models. Other firms began reaching out, asking for training on ethical management and leadership with empathy. It became a movement. Not because of me, but because people were hungry for it. For a world where loyalty wasn't exploited and kindness wasn't punished. It turns out, all we needed was proof that it was possible. On the anniversary of my father's passing, I returned to Portland. Left a copy of To Kill a Mockingbird on his grave with a note. I made it. And I never missed another moment. At the end of the year, the Zenith team threw a small celebration. Nothing fancy. Just homemade cookies, laughter, and a toast I didn't expect. Dana stood and raised her glass. "To Elise," she said, "for reminding us that business isn't just about ideas. It's about people. And that the bravest thing we can do is give a damn." I didn't cry then. But I did later. Alone in my office, reading a message from a receptionist named Claire at a different firm I'd consulted for. I was going to quit. I thought I didn't matter. But now my boss asks how I'm really doing. I think. "You saved me." I pinned it beside Malcolm's note. That was the return. That was the legacy. You don't need a title to lead. You don't need a corner office to change the system. Sometimes all you need is the courage to walk away from what breaks you, and walk toward what builds others. If my story speaks to you, I want to hear yours. Were you ever told your kindness was a liability? Did someone try to silence your compassion? Then I want you to know this. Compassion is not weakness. It's power. And it just might be the spark that changes everything.